Okay, now that we've got that function deployed, we can actually create our API gateway to call all our Lambda functions externally. Let's go to the Services tab up the top left. We're going to scroll down until we get to the Network and Content Delivery section and click on API Gateway. Now, if this is your first API, you'll see the Getting Started page, so just click on Getting Started here. If it's not your first API, just click on the Create New API button. You'll get a welcome message, so just click OK. We're going to click on New API here. We're going to give it a name. Let's call it ACGSFB. And you can give it a description if you like. I'm just going to leave mine blank. As the endpoint type, just select Regional. Then click on Create API. Now, once you've created an API, you can actually add resources to the API, which you can think of as API endpoints. So we're going to click on Action. I'm going to click on Create Resource. In the resource name, we're just going to call it User Profile. And you can see it's actually populating the path for us. We'll leave it as is. Make sure that you tick the Enable API Gateway Calls button here, or Cross-Origin Resource Sharing. What this allows us to do is call this API endpoint from a different domain than the one that the function's hosted on. So we're just going to tick that there and click on Create Resource. Now, with our resource selected in the side, we can see that we've already got one method here called options, and this is for the calls functionality, which we're not going to get too much into. But we do want to create a new method, a get method, so we can actually call our API endpoint. So click on Actions with the user profile selected, and click on Create Method. You'll now see this little drop down here, and you can choose a whole bunch of different request types, but we're just going to select Get, and then click on the tick. Now, to set this method up, we need to tell it what we're going to integrate it with. You can choose a whole bunch of different types of integrations. For example, if you want to make a HTTP call, or if you want to call an AWS service directly, but we want to call a Lambda function, so we're just going to leave Lambda function selected. Next, make sure that you tick the Use Proxy Integration button here. And what this does is it will actually take all the information from the request that we're making through API Gateway and send it through to our Lambda function in the event parameter that it passes through. Next, we're going to select the Lambda region, which is US to East 1. And now we're going to type in our function. So we're going to type get user profile and select it. Then click Save. Click OK, and this will grant permission for API Gateway to call your Lambda function. Once that's created, you'll get this nice overview as to what's going to happen when your get method gets executed. So the client's going to make a request. It's going to be a method request for get. It's going to go through the Lambda proxy and then hit your Lambda function. The response will come back out and it'll go back to the client. Now, before we can actually use our API, we need to deploy it. So in the current state, it's actually not deployed. It's just in our console here. So we need to click on this Actions button here and click on Deploy API. We need to give our API a deployment stage, so you can have different stages for development, staging, or production, or whatever scheme that you like to use, blue, green, if you like. So click on New Stage. And we're just going to call this one Dev. Just going to hit the Deploy button here now. And now our development API has been deployed. We can invoke this API using the invoke URL here, so we'll need this in a little tick. But for now, let's go back to our application. Now, the first thing that we need to do is we need to get the configuration file from our previous lab into the current lab. So let's go to lab 2, website, JS, and we're going to copy this config.json file here. Just going to copy. Now we want to paste this into the same website in lab 3. So let's go back, go to lab 3, website, JS, and we're going to paste the file here. I'm going to replace. Perfect. So that's going to save us from entering extra config. Now let's open up this config file because there is another parameter that we need. At the end of this auth0 object, add a comma. And we're going to add a new key called API base URL. I'm going to do colon, single quotes. We're going to go and copy that API endpoint into this space here. So let's go back to our API dashboard. I'm going to copy all of this here. Go back to Visual Studio Code and paste it in. Make sure that you save this file.